All right, welcome everybody to Lifestyle Medicine. We got another episode here with the awesome Neal Henegar. So, Neal, how recently has this combo medicine come into your life? How long has the timeline been?
Well, I started working with the medicine about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so it originally was introduced to me as a complementary medicine from the Amazon with ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
But I started to actually serve the medicine a couple years ago and founded Kambo Frog Detox and the Kambo Foundation.
I see. And so, Neal, for the people that don't know what combo medicine is, I've partaken in a ceremony only twice, a little over a year ago. But for the people that don't know what it is, how it works, can you just give a real broad overview of the background, what it is, where it comes from, how they harvest it, and just the background of what it is for the people that don't know?
Absolutely. The combo medicine is a medicine that's actually the secretion of the Phyllomedusa bicolor, or the giant waxy tree frog of the lower Amazonian rainforest. And the the folklore of the medicine is that it was a gift to the Kikuan or the Matses. It's not specific what tribe, but the gentleman who it was gifted to was an indigenous healer or a shaman, and his name was Kambo. And so, as the story goes, his people were very sick, and nothing seemed to be curing them. So he went with the what we call the grandmother medicine, or the ayahuasca. Yahe is another word for it. And he went into the deepest part of the Amazonian jungle. And it was in a vision there that the gift of the giant waxy tree frog was given to him in service, medically, to heal his people. So that's the folklore and the origins of the combo medicine.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very unique medicine. In the vision, Kambo, the shaman, was given a technique where a small twig, which is a vine, was used to just break the surface of the epidermis and open up the lymphatic system, open up this medicine to the lymph system. And so in a combo ceremony, a practitioner applies points to the arm, usually closest to the heart, and accessing the lymphatic system, and then a small amount of this secretion that is taken from the frog. By the way, the frog is not harmed in the process of extracting this secretion.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know.
And it's interesting. Yeah, it's very, very, very important, right? Because it's hard to have respect for an animal's gift if we're taking its life in the process
Sure.
of taking its medicine.
Fair enough.
So in this process, the shaman or the combo extractor calls the frog from nature, and the frog literally comes out of the jungle in a response to this call, and basically climbs down the tree. And the shaman, who has a very friendly relationship with these animals, simply brings the frog over to an area, and then goes through the process of extraction, which is kind of rubbing the back and taking this white milky secretion from the animal, and then applying it on a stick. So in the combo ceremony, we hydrate this secretion that is rich in these peptides, and we hydrate it with saliva, which has enzymes that activate these peptides, and then a small little this little kind of booger is put on these points, and so this is the ceremony, and the Kambo medicine essentially is this process of introducing these peptides via this frog and via the opening of the epidermis and the lymphatic system, and in 15 seconds you're in it. This is not a psychotropic plant, or excuse me, it's not a psychotropic medicine. So it's not. It doesn't have any hallucinations or hallucinatory properties to it. But it is used by the indigenous people to clear what is referred to as panema, or bad energy, bad luck energy, which can show up in a myriad of places: emotionally, mentally, issues with pregnancy, issues with sleeping, spiritual issues, genetic. So this medicine has such a wide variety of applications. There was it first came on the set in the early 1950s when a biologist, Vittorio Espalmer, who was doing a lot of research with peptides and signaling molecules. You might have heard of him. He actually received the Nobel Peace Prize for discovering the serotonin pathways.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
So he discovered this frog, and I had a quote from him. He said, "This is a fantastic chemical cocktail with potential medical applications unequaled by any other amphibian." So
wow.
what Vittorio noticed is that here is this remarkable animal, and as we know, the amphibians have this unique almost ability as an alchemist to change the environment from water to dry land, to move between elemental.
Right.
And to have the adaptogenic ability to shift and change its external chemical layer. And so one of the unique things about this medicine that makes it so beautiful and unadulterated, and truly in its natural form, is that the frog will not produce these peptides in a lab or in basically any other space except the natural jungle that it has a symbiotic relationship with. So we don't know exactly what this frog eats or what he bumps his butt against, what plant, what chemicals that or what alkaloids or nutrients that this frog really consumes to create these this diverse peptide spectrum. But we do know that if we take it out of its element, that it no longer produces these peptides.
That point, I mean, everything you're saying is very interesting, but that point that's fascinating for a bunch of different reasons. I mean, it spins my mind into a bunch of different directions, but it does point to that it seems that the frog definitely has a relationship with its environment, and whatever it's interfacing with has a very real role in what it's producing in terms of its secretions, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what is also cool about it, and there's a couple peptides that have been isolated, that have produced. There's a peptide phylomedusin, and this is obviously from the Phylomedusa bicolor being the Latin name of the frog, but the phylomedusin creates a response in the body that produces a release in the body that's 40 times stronger than morphine.
Wow.
So it's very interesting, and they've used this medicine. There's also a peptide that opens up the smooth walls of our cardiovascular systems. So,
Wow.
within seconds after applying this medicine, the heartbeat increases as if we're running a marathon, and in our entire vascular system vasodilates, including, very importantly, quite a bit of microcirculation, which is about, to give your viewers an idea, it's about the third of the width of a thickness of a follicle of hair. And so the brain is primarily microcirculation. So, I mean, within, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bam, you're in it. Your entire vascular system opens up. Your entire microcirculation to the brain and the central nervous system opens up. Blood is surging, moving, accumulating, nourishing, bringing water, nutrients, taking metabolic waste out of interstitial tissue, areas that have been atrophied, closed down, cold, toxic, systemic toxemia in this body. Immediately, the body goes through a response of activating, opening, and clearing, and it's it's very powerful in the way. But it's very interesting that nature pretty much just reserves the right to hold the medicine in a sacred way so that human beings cannot reproduce it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It keeps us hands off to a degree. That's very interesting. Yeah, that's
Right.
oh yeah, right. Because a lot of things we touch don't go necessarily too well, especially when we start trying to isolate or profit off of medicines. So there's a certain amount
Right.
of inherent intelligence in that. Let me ask you a quick question. So on just kind of talking about that response in the body, because what you're describing for the people that, this is all new to some people. Yes, I mean, when I had the little booger, the resin the resin booger put onto my spots on my arm, that response that you spoke of is very real. The first thing I noticed was my heart rate just pounding very quickly, and then I started to sweat, and then the the nausea and all the other things hit pretty quickly. But can you talk a little bit more about what's happening? I mean, I had the shaman that I worked with. The way he explained it, and tell me if this is, there's language barrier sometimes, but tell me if this is accurate, and then flush this out a little more. He had said that essentially once it's put into your system, right, and it starts to get into the body, your body essentially, the alarm goes off, like red alert, like there's something in here that is foreign and that could be a problem technically, but he said that the body starts to purge. It starts to detox, to flush everything out, to get this thing moving. And can you talk about that a little bit? Like what I know the immune system turns on, but what's actually happening? Is it just the immune system turns on and it dumps everything because this thing is coming in? But talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. So, there's quite a bit with regards to this. Peter Gorman, who brought the medicine, besides Vittoria doing the research, who was, pretty much a mad lab scientist with, the microcosm of the universe. Peter Gorman was more of a journalist who, in 1986, was working for Penthouse magazine of all positions in journalism, and they were doing some research on the Amazon area and the medicines that were coming out of the Amazon medicine. So when he brought the medicine to the Department of Herpology to do further research at the Smithsonian Institute, they looked at this medicine, and it was originally in his book Zappo in My Soul, which was the first book on the Kambo Frog. He referred to it as poison, but he later corrected himself because as we have worked with this medicine, we realize that some very important facts are evident. One, the frog has no natural enemies, so there's not a reason for it to produce a poison in self-defense.
Interesting. Wow.
So the secretion, not the poison, as it was referred to earlier, the secretion is more of a mechanism of preservation of the skin and regulating the internal and external environments. So when we put the medicine on the body, like you were saying, yes, the body immediately responds. But what we find is that because of these peptides, not poison, are bioavailable, they create a response in the body that's not of there's an intruder, but more of that there is some unique signaling molecule peptides that are activating the body, and they're activating the body with the response of vasodilation, increase in heartbeat, dropping of blood pressure, access to epidermis, vacating and opening. But the body, it's an interesting, we see this in nature, right? If you go and catch a snake that's just eaten, he'll regurgitate. If you go to grab a frog, piss on you, or shit on you. So what we find is that when the body comes into a foreign response or in a place of a new experience or feeling that it's coming into fight or flight, that it goes through this detoxification process where it drops its bowels, it drops what's in its stomach, it drops the toxins in the organs to prepare for this last life battle, fight or flight response.
Right.
These peptides have this effect, and the first response in the body is that we find the opening of the vascular system, which makes sense, right? It's like open the power ways and prepare, because we might have to fly, and the body responds in that way. Activates the endocrine system, the immune system, and the immune system is chasing the energy through the body and just opens up and electrifies the entire system to prepare for this last line of defense. But then it's not a poison, so these peptides are getting this response in the body, but then they're bioavailable, so then they create all these other responses. I've seen where, I'm not making a medical proclamation here, but I've seen where a type 1 diabetic who genetically inherited diabetes from his parents who had mutated from a lifetime of poor diet, a child who has never produced insulin, I've seen these peptides activate and clear genetic dispositions in the body because that they were not in their correct functionality. So this is this term, Gray, that we hear, adaptogenic.
Yeah.
It's like, what is adaptogenic, right?
Right.
These are, and we talk with Kai on some of these.
Absolutely.
Adaptogens, Gaiostemma and these, Reishi and Chaga, cordyceps, and these medicines that have, it seems that they've got a more ancient relationship with the understanding of our systems, and that to some degree, when they are introduced into our system, they kind of have this checklist that they kind of go down and go, oh, this is off.
Right.
And to some degree, that our consciousness is kind of sat on a bench over here while this adaptogen takes over our mainframe and just says, hey, you might want this, and you might want to notice that. We see this a lot with the entheogens of like psilocybin. It's a beautiful, where we see microdosing and such that's happening out with Google and Apple, and where this almost subtle intelligence that has an overview of us just kind of sits us down and just says, look at this, feel this, stretch here, drink water here, breathe here. Oh, now you got to go. have a bowel movement, and then you go into a yoga position, and then your bone moves, and you're like, how did all that come together? And so this medicine has very similar description in the way when it's going through the scan of the body as an adaptogen, it's creating DNA sequences that are making modifications in the body, and it does it in a way that I've never seen. I mean, I've been working with entheogens since I was 15 years old. And to give you a little bit of background on myself, I started doing healing work in the Chinese field with acupressure and Tui Na, Shiatsu at age 11. So I really started studying medicine and music and mysticism, which led me into shamanism and how the relationship between medicine and nature, creates a harmony. And so I started working with entheogens, starting around age 15 with my father. My father was a very open gentleman. He was in the baby boomers description, right? Like one of he was there at Woodstock, and so I had one of those great parents that had this approach where it was, hey, listen, if you would like to try something, let's approach it. Let's do a little bit of research on it, and I will sit and hold space with you because I want you to explore in a safe way, and I also want to support you as your father. So I had this kind of foundation, and he was a shiatsu therapist and a great builder, but he was, to some degree, an open psycho-cosmonaut, one who was open to exploring,
It's a blessing. So, it's a blessing that you had that. I mean, so many people don't get that with their folks. There's, parents can be downright oppressive sometimes with how we navigate life. So the fact that you got that is amazing. Yeah, it's a blessing for sure. And I just want to interject, just so the people that are listening, this term you tossed out, adaptogenic. So for those of you that don't know, you can research this online, you can look, but what Neal's talking about, what I'm familiar with as well, Chinese medicine has a whole classification of herbs, as do other medicine traditions that they refer to as adaptogenic herbs. These herbs are essentially, they are stress regulating. So if you are excess, right, it can pull you down. If you are deficient, it can bring you up. So when Neal is talking about this adaptogenic quality, it sounds like Kambo is essentially a super adaptogen in its own right. It's got this really profound profile that does some pretty amazing things for the body, regardless of where you are, right, in your health and your collective health standing. Oh, we froze up for a second. You still there?
There is a fantastic chemical cocktail here with potential medical applications that are unequaled. I mean, this is what's interesting is when some of the research came out of the Smithsonian Institute in 1985 with Peter Gorman's work, really trying to look at what this medicine didn't affect than what it did affect, because it affected and changed single disease and endocrine disease, anything that was dormant, autoimmune disease, anything that, because, and this is a where we start to shift on my own medical observation. As I, and very quickly, just to recap, I'll give you just a quick, because I want to give the audience a little bit of my bio. So at 15, I started studying, the indigenous medicine and especially hallucinogens, exploring consciousness, exploring, is this third dimension the only dimension? Working with ancestors. What about my grandparents? Are they still working with me? These concepts, which are known to the Native American and to the Central and South American traditions, these are key pieces in working in a multi-dimensional space. And we know that we're not just a mental being or a physical being. And we see that. So fast forward working into medicine and shamanism and going through various rite of passages, sweat lodges, sun dances, Yaqui traditions, Mayan traditions, through all of my studies, and I'm a yoga practitioner, a Qigong practitioner. I have 27 modalities that I've accumulated over the last 30 years and since that time. And chiropractor, I worked with the Cherokee bone setters, and so fast forward into this as well, and then also having a medical background. I have a stem cell company, Neomatrix Medical, and I've got another medical software company. So I've got roots in the indigenous, and I've got my head in the allopathic game. And what I see here is that Western medicine and Western lifestyle has created a condition in which the body, which is a receptive platform, is suffering from systemic toxemia. So this systemic toxemia begins, of course, in the gut, right, in the belief system, and the Ayurvedic system, which is the Eastern Indian or the Hindu medical system, says that the two indicators that your health is about to go down is, one, there's a little voice that is telling you don't do that and you do it anyways, and then two, your digestion. So we have an issue in this country, right? We have the three main food groups are meat, cheese, and bread. Meat, cheese, bread. If you look at it, most every food item is like a meat, a cheese, a bread. It's circular, it's a sandwich, it's to go. So we look at this and we have food, wheat, corn, soy, some of the main grains that are out there that are inoculated with geosites, right? And those geosites we know are defoliants for flora. So it kills the 5 pounds of naturally occurring bacteria that we need to digest. The 3 strains, I believe, are Acidophilus, Bifidus, and Bacillus. And so we have a diet here that destroys the microflora and what helps us to digest into smaller particles. And then we're not getting enough water or oxygen. So then we're dehydrated. We have bad flora. And then we wash it down with a sugary drink that is super high in carbohydrates, and we're on this high carbohydrate, high sugar potency diet existence with this emotional body that just goes up, down, up, down, up, down. And so this condition has created this $5 trillion industry of medical sick care. And so we have all of these labels and specialists and, these types of compartmentalization of allopathic medicine. And you take something like Kambo and it just comes in and boom, it drops the proverbial A-bomb on your ass. And there is no placebo effect here, right? This is not in your head.
No. It's definitely not. Let's segue into that for a second, because Neal was telling me, he said they referred to this as the warrior's medicine. And I thought, that's about as accurate as you can get, because when Kambo kicks in, I mean, it's not a pretty experience. It's a very raw, and I'm going to have Neal flesh this out even more. He has more experience, but as I mentioned before, when it goes into your body, within 10 seconds, I'd say the heart rate is pounding hard. For me, the sweats kicked in very quickly, and then these just huge waves of nausea, profound nausea, where I thought, oh my God, I feel so unbelievably sick. I mean, being sick from alcohol or anything else it pales by comparison. It's just a really intense, god-awful nausea. And then, I proceeded to puke into a bucket just profusely. I mean, I puked and I puked and I puked, and, my muscles cramped in my stomach from puking a little bit, and I mean, it's rough. And thank God it only lasts about 15 to 20 minutes, I think. But, when it's really starting to settle, But yeah, talk about that a little bit. Your experience, what you've seen, because it's rough. I mean, it's not pleasant.
It is. It's rough around the edges.
Yes.
And, this is the thing that I have found is this universal characteristic of indigenous medicine, right? Like allopathic medicine just likes to delay. And the doctors they're just sitting there bullshitting us. Oh, don't worry, you can actually eat what you want. Right? It's like we have this evasion, right? It's like, oh, well, I'll just take the long way around. I don't have to change my belief systems. Let's not be too direct.
Sidestepping. Yeah, it's sidestepping, right? It's like flanking. Like, oh, no, you don't have to actually hit this head on, right?
I don't necessarily want adopt your beliefs that I need to change my diet. I'm going to go to Weight Watchers, and it's just a slight modification so that we're not disrupting the comfort and the association here, of the ego, right? And so indigenous medicine, it just drives a Mack truck right through all your level.
So true. So true, man.
And just sits there and the person sits on the edge of the fire pit and he's like, what? It's like, oh, go around. Oh, no, yeah, I know it's hot. And the shaman's like, no, go in to the fire. So, we indigenous medicine is indeed a pathway not around, not above, not below, but directly through the flames of transmutation. And there's a Tibetan proverb that I love, which is, God grant me the path of most resistance because it leads the quickest to enlightenment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Let us grind the gears so we can get to the nitty-gritty quickly.
And this is Kambo.
That is Kambo. Oh, my God.
You just hurl yourself into the flames, 15 seconds, your entire body is not even yours, and you are just sitting there on the sidelines just like, holy shit.
Yep.
And that moment where all of these things are taking place and we drink about 1.5 liters of water in the body because this is a lunar medicine. This is the water that, if we put this medicine in a classification, we would put it, elementally, it's a water medicine. The Inga, the Pingala, the rise and the fall of the fluid and the lymph, as you know, we have, 2 or 3 times more lymph in the body than we do have blood.
Right.
But the rise and the fall of the water in the body, in association with the moon and the magnetism of, right? So I love this idea that here's a medicine that can't be duplicated, Monsanto. It has to be in a natural, biodiverse, almost prehistoric, symbiotic relationship with its environment, and it works in a way that throws you right through the fire, opens the entire body like you're doing an autopsy. It's just all the organs, everything opens, and you're sitting, sweating, moving, and there's some interesting aspects to this, right? We know that the master cell for the immune system, the endocrine system, is the macrophage. So these macrophage are kind of, they're the, like how in Matrix, right? There's like Agent Smith, right?
Yeah.
So the macrophage are kind of managing all the common blood and the, all the synovial joints and shit that gets in there, or a splinter. If you get a splinter, you'll see under a microscope, it's actually the macrophage that are like moving to get it out of the body. So they've got the guest list with everyone that's supposed to be there in the body.
Right.
And when we get very sick, the body has a fever, right? So this temperature raising above this 104 degrees gives this optimum environment and creates this temperature sequence that the body is raising its temperature to purify the heat and to reproduce these macrophage. So, in cancer patients and such, we give a false kind of loading of this, oh, we have T cells and we're going to put these cells and it looks like you're really strong, right? And that's where a lot of cancer medicine works from. They're like, we're going to put this in you, then we're going to tear you down, then we're going to inject it back in you. But the reality is that the endocrine system the whole time is not strong, regardless of the T cells. We're looking for a very strong endocrine system that has the support from the macrophage to handle the maintenance and the clearing and the cleaning of these, malignant cell formations, cancers, things like that, and all these other heavy metals and these things that are contributing to this systemic toxic state in which these cells are continuing to mutate. So the macrophage is very important in this process, and it's totally left out of cancer treatment, of course. But in the process of working with the Kambo, we see that not only does this medicine dislodge autoimmune disease and disorders, even dormant autoimmune diseases, the Epstein-Barr, which is an endocrine dysfunction in correlation with Lyme disease, herpes, AIDS. There's a lot of white paper study with regards to Kambo working with AIDS. So, these types of conditions where in an allopathic medical landscape, our doctors are using an immune suppression technique.
Yes.
So we're not going to talk about your diet. It's okay. I had a hamburger today with a Coca-Cola too. Here you go. You want a Coke or a diet? You just gave blood. You want a Coca-Cola?
Right. Right.
Unbelievable.
So crazy.
So you're like,
so crazy. I know.
And so you've got an autoimmune disease. So we're going to use a steroid or a repressive medication, so that your immune doesn't become strong and start to fight against things, right? This is this belief peddling that happens in Western medicine. And in Indigenous medicine, we find just the opposite. Just the opposite is, we start you on your knees, and then all that stuff that's been building on your autoimmune that's been attached, that's the first stuff that gets to come out, and we're going deep with it. And you're going to need to create a little more resilience, a little thicker skin, because it's going to get worse before it gets easier.
Right.
And so Indigenous medicine, and that's the beauty of Kambo, is that within 15 seconds, the body vasodilates, opens up the entire system. The lymphatic system is the sewage system for the body, the lymph nodes. And we see this with cancer and such, these areas and these, what tradition, what ceremony do we have in the West that clears the lymphatic system? Nobody's taught us. There is nothing. Maybe some lymphatic drainage, exercise, but other than that, there is not a medicine that we ritualistically use in a way to clean the pipes.
Right.
And this has a beautiful effect in that capacity, because within seconds, the body is dumping, draining, and all of this blood is going through the kidneys, and all of these toxins are going to the stomach. And then, as I tell people, I said, and then you feel like you have a little demon baby in your stomach, because it's the solvents, the heavy metals, the toxicity, the chemicals from the foods that we eat, and it's all right there. And in that moment, you feel like you're poisoned. You do feel like it's a frog poison.
Big time.
Because it's actually what these peptides have activated the body to go through a overhaul, emergency clumping of all of the organs, the organ channels, the lymphatic, the cardiovascular, the intercellular tissue, microcirculation, brain, central nervous system, everything. And this happens within minutes. It's like, oh my God, what is happening to me? Neal, I hate you, Neal.
It's so fast. It's so quick. That was the shaman that I worked with. He said, now look, Gray, he's like, you're going to this is going to go into your bloodstream. He's like, and you're going to feel like you're going to die, but you're not going to die. But you're going to feel there's going to be a moment during this where you think you're going to die. And I thought, well, that's not very encouraging. But then I remember thinking, no, it's probably not going to be that bad. And sure enough, there was one point where I thought, what's happening? And then it just, it kind of stays, and that course rides itself. But I mean, there was that moment of I could feel whatever was inside of me. And I live a pretty healthy lifestyle. So, I don't have any demonstrative huge health problems, but I still felt, I live here, in the West, there's stuff, in the food, in the air. So I did feel it, and it was powerful. I mean, it really, it knocked me for a loop, and it was, 2 days back to back. I want to ask you this, Neal, and because this all kind of intermeshes, but I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I want to share a little bit of my experience with it, and then its relation to the other aspects of ourselves. So as you're talking about this, you're going through and mentioning, the science is amazing, first of all the things that you're talking about, what it does to the endocrine system, the lymphatic system, what happens at the cellular level. So with that, right, the human being, by most traditions, mind, body, and spirit, right? And we're talking about what happens in the body. The thing that I noticed very quickly, and other people I've talked to who have partaken in Kambo have said very similar things. There is this trial by fire, almost a rite of passage tone to this, that when I went through it, it feels like a metaphoric war, or a mini war that your body goes through. There's a battle that's happening, and it's detoxifying and it's cleansing, and you're not really fighting with anybody, obviously, but there's something happening that's very real, it's very raw. And when you came out of it, I remember thinking the emotional shift that was apparent very quickly right after I did it was powerful. There was my mood was definitely uplifted, but there was something about essentially going through something very difficult that was physically very demanding. There is that, go out to complete a task, complete it, and when you come out, you're like, I did that. I went through that. There's something about that. And when I've talked to people, they've said the same thing. They're like, going through a very difficult process, even though it's very short-lived, there's something in there that's good for the human psyche, right? We all need resistance. We all need to go through these experiences that are difficult, challenging. And when you come out, you're like, I did pretty well. I'm stronger than I thought I was, or there's a tone to that. So you had mentioned early on when we first started talking about Panema, and that was brought up to me as well the first time I sat with it. And that idea, the way the shaman described it to me too, he says that all of the poor decisions that we make, physical, mental, or emotional, it's sort of like Panema is something that builds up in the body like an energetic phlegm. It's like almost an immaterial slime that you can't see. And then when you take the Kambo, it just pops it out quickly and goes through that. So can you talk a little bit about, the emotional piece, the emotional component? I know I've definitely read that it's good for depression, people, when they have like depression problems. But can you talk about, a little bit about the spirit, I guess more or less of what happens to the person? Because the science is fascinating, but I just want to hit all the threads. I want to hear multiple lenses. So, yeah.
Sure. Well, you had mentioned a death experience, right? And I think in the West, right, we, this is a coined term, like we have this spiritual ego, like, okay, I'm going through this process. Well, in the indigenous rites of passage, in the indigenous medicines, these medicines will actually, destroy the false self. And the false self is, like you said, an accumulation of dualistic choices that have created a splintering in the psyche, a separate identity, if you will, that you can fall back on. And yet the individual is governed by principles like one cannot pass through two doors at the same time. One can only pass through one door. And until then, they decide they are still sitting in the hallway with their foot wedged into two doors, regardless of whether the illusion that they believe that they're moving forward or not.
Right.
And so indigenous medicine has this way of like hitting the nitrous and the turbo button and just blasting through, pushing you through one of those doors. And in the process, as you are hurling yourself into the very flames of the fire, the old self is destroyed, right? We choose an ego death over a physical death. And yet, and we know this with the study of addiction, right?
Yeah.
People are going into a place of creating a toxic environment and perpetuating the development of this ulterior ego or this separate identity because they're looking for a reset, right? They're looking for a somatic nervous system reset. We call it parasympathetic unwinding. And Peter Levine, who is a trauma author that started to study the somatic nervous system of animals, used the example of the relationship between a zebra and a lion, right? So in an environment where there's limited resources in the middle of the Serengeti, and it's not the rainy season, it's the dry season, oftentimes a zebra has to drink water with across from the very predator that is designed to kill it.
Right.
And so in those cases where the lion goes after the zebra goes into this what's called a fight or flight state. And again, the body drops everything, gets ready to give its last best shot at living in an emergency situation. And if the zebra makes it through that, it will go through the sequence of parasympathetic unwinding where the nervous system literally shakes and jostles and twitches.
Yeah, right.
And then tomorrow it can go and drink at the same pond with the same lion that attacked it the day before and not be attached with fear. And so
right.
in the West, we as human beings, and this is the book, that as Peter Levine's talking about, this psychosomatic work, that in the West, we are constantly in this beta state, right? Do. It's, if the Chinese said it was 10,000 things back in, the period of Lao Tzu and Confucius, this the 10 million things, right? And it's all right here. And,
yeah, right.
And constantly.
So true.
Orally available, the infinite,
it's a universe. It's a universe in our hand right now. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know.
Up, Scott, and here it is, the infinite sea of potential thought and creation that in the limitless external world of materialism and things and tangible things is right there. And so we are in this place where we keep building layers on the onion until we get to this level where we are afflicted with the panema, right? And the panema is the dark, the dense, the dualistic, the things of oppositions that we haven't come and experienced fully because we haven't let the door close. We see it in relationships. We see it in, and this is when, our ego and our collective belief systems here in the West, in the industrial world, have become the driving force instead of our spiritual. And so I think really my experience has been delivering this medicine hundreds of times is that we have lost the ritual of truly surrendering the ego and going through a rite of passage with these, ancient ceremonies that are designed to put us on our fucking knees.
Yeah, right. It's so humbling. It's humbling as shit. Yeah.
Right. And so with this medicine, it's like it almost chooses the egoic death. And the thing that's different about the ayahuasca or the DMT and these other Bufo Alvarez and these radical, chemical responses in the body that create a psycho-spiritual connection is that the combo does it in a way that doesn't give your mind and your imagination so much to bite into. It really is primarily concentrated in the physiological emotional body, but there is a psycho-spiritual cleansing and releasing, but it's almost a sleight of hand by the combo, because you don't get to be involved in this, in this projection and acceleration of your hallucinogenic experience, right? This is on you, and it's on you, and your body doesn't have time. This isn't like sit down with the grandmother ayahuasca, like in the Matrix, and have a conversation with the oracle. No, this is on your shit right now. You're on your knees, you're drinking water, you're begging for your life, you're throwing up. And when you're throwing up, I mean, we're not talking about like you remember when you drank too much tequila. We're talking about somebody turns on the valves and the floodgate opens through your mouth, and afterwards you think, how in the hell could I have had that much stuff in my body? So it really ejects everything out of the body.
Yeah.
And then in a way that is difficult to describe, because I know that, I want to circle back onto the spiritual aspects of this, right? It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the depression, or the medication,
right,
or the action, or was it the thought that created the depression, being in the cul-de-sac? And so somehow the combo has a way of working on all of these dimensions of existence, the mental, the physiological, the spiritual, the genetic, right? Because people could feel like they're cursed. If your parents were 300 pounds and by the time you were old enough to express your point of view that you don't want to eat like this and you don't want to be a 150-pound 11-year-old, it's too late, and you may feel like that's a spiritual curse.
Right.
And alcoholism is a spiritual curse. People that have a predisposition genetically not because of their choices, it would be considered a curse. Yeah. And in these spiritual traditions, Kambo is one of the few medicines that removes this panema, this kind of like lineal karma and responsibility to follow through where your parents and your creators, your genetic contributors messed up, right?
Yeah.
Or didn't do the work. So this medicine is beautiful because that it clears that energy. I'll give you an example. And this is why a lot of times this medicine is referred to as the Ganesh medicine, the remover of obstacles.
Yeah.
So I had a woman who came to me, and she was married to a physician, long-term relationship, 15, 20 years. He was very much a very oppressive male in the old paradigm, very chauvinistic, very domineering, didn't want her to have a job. She had Lyme's disease with complications into a few varieties of parasites.
Wow.
And this alone enough to drive you crazy. She suffered from depression, anxiety, sleep deprivation, and she was on roughly about 13 pharmaceutical medicines.
Oh my God. That's rough.
And this was somebody who, this was not just the beginning for her. She had been in this condition for 9 years.
Wow.
So Kambo was this interesting experience. Well, she did the first round. She had never gone through anything, suffered anything. It was a big emotional suffering for her, right?
Yeah.
She felt like she was being punished, etc. She had this experience. We were there to support her. She got very sick the next day, continued, so she took a day off, and she continued to purge. The husband was very abusive to her, saying, well, that's why I told you, you shouldn't have done this, crazy, snake oil,
Right.
indigenous this and this, blah, blah, that. And so he didn't even want to get her water, and she was bedridden. So she found the strength, got up the next day, did Kambo, and then did her third treatment. Now, she, in 3 treatments, and we're talking about this is what happened in this woman's universe in 1 week. She cold turkey got off of 13 medications entirely. She had no more parasites. Her Epstein-Barr was not responding at all. And for all intents and purposes, the Lyme, the Epstein-Barr, and the parasites associated with this chronic condition were eliminated.
Wow.
So she got medications, she got the Lyme's disease and all of the complications around it eliminated. She slept for the first time. She, her entire somatic nervous system just shut down like 14 hours. When she woke up, and we did a little coaching. We just, we give a little bit around this when I serve this medicine. And this medicine can empower. It can do some feng shui and relationships.
Oh, for sure. I bet.
Because energetically, when we remove this oppressive energy, this panema, we start to notice the things that have been contributing to it. So she got off medications. She destroyed the Lyme's, Epstein-Barr, the parasites. She purged a lot of the anger and liver, and everything came out. She, for the first time in 10 years, got a job. I mean, we're talking about within 10 days after this Kambo ceremony.
It's amazing.
She took her husband, she sat him down, and with that stone cold, determined way that only a woman can transmit something, she said, "You ever treat me like this again, this is what's going to happen. You understand, this is the dynamic of the relationship from here on out. Sink, swim, drown, I don't care, but this is my boundaries. This is what I'm willing to accept, and the terms in which I'm willing to accept them on. You behave like that again, you're done." And so we talk about removing obstacles. Well, her obstacles were a complex situation based on
many variables, right? Many variables.
Repressive, not feeling empowered as well to work, express herself, feel that she's earning for herself, expressing her service. And so, this is an example of how, kind of multi-dimensional the term panema could be described, and how it's difficult to describe to people the effects of Kambo.
Right.
But, one thing's for sure is that relationships move out, empowerment, boundaries. And this medicine is a medicine that is used by the hunters. So the hunters will take this medicine to clear the lymphatic system, and you would think in nature, the olfactory awareness and the smell is one of the keenest things in nature, right? Like, you might not be able to see a jaguar 100 feet away because it's behind some plants, but if you can smell that animal, it's there even though it's invisible.
Right.
So in nature, the Mates, right, and the Yawanawa and the indigenous people that work with the Kambo, they use it to flush the lymphatic system so that the animals can't smell them in the jungle.
Right.
Because they're hunting the animals. They're wanting to get close. And then also, it creates a great amount of strength in the body. I mean, this is a little segue to talk about. It's like, here is a medicine. Here is this frog slime, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Frog slime.
It's a frog slime, right? That all of a sudden you think that you became one of the Incredibles, right? You are, have this huge energy source. And I've had work with weightlifters and people that are big into the gym, and I've had this on probably 6 to 8 cases now, where people have literally gone and done double the weight that they can. Double. I've had people run marathons and run 2 minutes faster, 3 minutes faster than they did. So it creates this, and you would imagine, right, it's like a carburetor that has, a bunch of gum in it, right?
Right. Gunked up, yep.
it cannot run its full capacity. And so we think of this on a neurological level, right? The axiom, the dendrite, the conductivity of the electricity is where a lot of this toxicity starts to build up and create neurological degeneration and disruption of neural pathways, which means the lights might, the switch might be flicked on, but the lights are not all electrified in the body. And so
Right.
clearing the toxicity out of the body via the lymph and everything in the organs creates a certain amount of energetic gain and strength. And so these indigenous people would use this to be able to go with no food for several days at a full running pace through the jungle so they could get to the hunting grounds. And they're invisible. And then also another thing that we notice is that our eyesight, our smell, our palate, our hearing, like this frog slime, it gives you superhero powers. I mean, we have this relative reference point. Oh, I can hear this, I can see to this degree, I can smell to this degree, I can taste the energy or the nutrients in my food to this degree.
Yeah.
And after these sessions, we experience this amplification of like, what's actually going on now? I'm hearing 3 blocks away, this guy closed his front door. How's that even possible, right? And because there is like in sonar with dolphins, right? They know there's a picture of this field that happens in the auditory field, in the so it's interesting that this medicine does. So it's medicine.
It's fascinating, man, and it takes me back to this idea. So it got me thinking. This was one of the things that I came across with a couple of the Qigong masters that I've encountered, and one of the things. Did you ever meet Master Zhou, the guy that the fire palm guy?
Yeah, he stayed at my house.
Yeah. He lived with us too for a couple of weeks when Kai was and Paul and I were all living at the treehouse in Santa Cruz. He was with us for a couple of weeks, and one of the things he said was, because he could, I had read a lot of the weird Qigong stuff that people could do, in books, and a lot of it, as a martial artist and in the field, I was like, that sounds like a lot of it I thought was bullshit. I saw this guy do some stuff that I thought, whoa, that is not typical, that is unnatural. And one of the things that he said, look, only in a completely unnatural world where we're completely like clogged, where we are bogged and our windshields are foggy, do we see these things and think that they're, supernatural. He was like, this isn't supernatural. This is actually your natural state. We've forgotten because things have just gotten cloudy and gunked up through living, right, through bad thinking habits. And it kind of makes me think about that when you're talking about this, is that, yeah, it's like we have these, we do have these amazing senses, but over time they degrade, right, for a number of different reasons. Time, age, emotional, trauma, all these things start to bog the system down. And it seems like when this medicine comes into the body, people get back to a clean, natural state. And that natural state is amazing. The natural human organism is an amazing instrument. I mean, it's just the best tool you'll ever have is this, this flesh suit is just, it's incredible. So it's amazing to hear that so much is cleaned out from having this medicine come into the body. I mean, it's fascinating. This is a question, because a lot of these medicine traditions talk about the personality, right? They talk about the personality of a plant. Chinese medicine talks about it. They say conceptualize herbs as a personality, a substance as a personality. If you think of it as a personality, for one, you have gratitude, and two, you understand that they all behave differently in your body. They do something different. But one of the things that happened, I believe it was the first day. So the first day, the first ceremony that I did, they put them on. They had to put a lot on me. He said I was resisting. I think there was he said that I had a lot of internal resistance. So I had to get 9 dots the first day. And it was just this like, yeah, it was gnarly. I was like, he just kept going. He's like, all right, well, second day I had to have 11, but it was way easier the second day. But when he did it, the medicine went in, and I drank all that water prior to the ceremony, and then I started to vomit. And after the 7th or 8th purge, I remember puking into the bucket. And I'll never forget this. When I looked into the bucket, clear as day, the way the foam and like the bubbles, essentially, the vomit, the way the picture it had in the bottom of the bucket was the way the foam had arranged itself was definitively a frog. I mean, it was perfectly symmetrical. It was like 2 blank spots with foam. It had a mouth, and it even had a couple little, the little vertical slits in the eyes, and the face, the frog's face was essentially floating on top of my vomit. And I remember looking at it, and I almost asked the guy, Majid, I was like, Majid, I was thinking, like, get my phone, I got to take a picture of this, but I didn't, of course, but I was like, I want people to see what I'm seeing, because it's the frog. Like, I'm seeing a frog's face in the bucket. And when I asked him the next day, I said, Majid, I said, that was the only psychedelic part of the journey. I thought it really felt like I was seeing it. And when I asked him, he goes, oh, not the first time I've heard that. Like, not the first time. He had said, like, he had heard that type of thing before, where people will see something in what they've, essentially vomited. But it felt like that. I remember thinking at the time, I thought, well, it's fairly reasonable. I just took in the frog's secretions, a very personal piece of the frog. It went in and it popped back out. I had this image of like the frog going in and the frog jumping out. But that, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what?
Well, it's interesting, right? Like there's a couple things. Now that we have all these like fake honey and stuff, they teach you how to like qualify it, right? And one of the techniques is that you add hot water, you move it around, and the honey itself will assume a natural icosahedron, like honeycomb, sacred geometric structure. So
wow.
here we have, we have the quote unquote magic of nature, right? And as you were speaking to, we get this. I get this so much because that I hold a huge space for this. You'll see some more if you go to KamboFrogDetox.com or the Kambo Foundation.
And that's your platform, right? The Kambo Frog Detox. Okay.
The Kambo Foundation is the non-for-profit organization, and we certify people to be able to deliver this amazing medicine. And then the Kambo Frog Detox is just the accumulation of research, and we're continuing the white paper studies and just kind of like keeping up with us. And then my blog on Instagram is I Love My Shaman.
Nice.
But we see this, man. We see this so clearly. Like one of my friends who was receiving the medicine, like a ceramic frog, and she didn't tell anybody. A ceramic, it could have been her landscape guys, but just random stuff. A ceramic frog ends up by her front door, just random. And she lives in a housing association here in Boca Raton, Tennis and golf club. Another lady, like a frog literally jumps on her head. Then she's a frog on my windshield. And so like
weird.
We start to, and this is not just here and there. This is like half of the people that I serve, Gray. Like they have a frog symbolic experience that is in their face, not just on the periphery. No, this is like I'm landing on your pineal gland from the front of your door. Okay, ready to do like, and here's
right.
It's so present, and so I think that this is this process and the spirit of this animal, right? When we do take the medicine, sometimes the face and the lips can swell, right? Because the lymphatic response and open up that microcirculation into the brain. And people literally look like amphibians for this process.
Oh my God. Bro, I have to, yes, I have to just interject this. So, there was a really nice guy that I met in this ceremony. There were a number of us, and it was a ceremony of Kambo and Ayahuasca, right? Kambo in the morning, Ayahuasca in the evenings. It was that pairing, which was great. But there was a guy, if he's listening to this, hello, Lokesh, the guy I met, Lokesh, who was in the ceremony. He did Kambo the second day, and I ended up having to leave. I think he did the morning, and I didn't end up seeing him again. And he sent me a text message, and he had swelled up. He's a good-looking guy, nice features, and I mean, he sent me this picture, and it was hysterical. He's like, yeah, I had a little swelling, and his lips were, the guy looked like a fake CGI. Everything was just puffed up, and he had this big shit-eating grin on his face, which was hilarious because he's like, hey, look at this, look at this train wreck. But his face, I couldn't believe the amount of swelling. And I said to my buddy that I was with at the time, I said, he looks like a fucking frog man. Like the guy he looked like a frog. It was the craziest thing. Obviously it was the reaction, but yeah, what you're talking about, it's hysterical too. It's so funny because the guy had such a good attitude about it,
Yeah, and it's the same thing, right? Like real medicine is the overlaying of the technology on the host.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The overlaying of the technology on the host. So like if when I do psilocybin medicine, and we know the relationship between psilocybin and mushrooms in the natural ecosystem is that these mushrooms grow on the outskirts of where the extensions of the roots are from the primary forest, acting as a distribution site to the secondary forest for nutrients. So we know, like, our lungs look like upside down trees.
Yep.
And we share gas exchange. So we know that the mushroom itself is an adaptogen and does repair on the neural pathways and creates neuroplasticity. And so when I'm in the medicine using those, using the psilocybin, I'm feeling literally, electronic repair work done to, the Holland sheaths and the connecting points in my body, and that's why it works on depression, right? Depression is the neurological breakdown of the pathways of happiness.
Yeah.
And the cul-de-sac of limitation and toxicity that leads to duality and the the emotional breakdown, just trying to go through two doors, not being able to do it.
Right.
And so what we find is that this medicine in that way is like we call it, you get kissed by the frog, right?
Yeah. He said the same thing. Yeah. They use that phrase, kissed by the frog. Yeah.
And I tell the ladies, I say, well, if you want to know what your lips are going to look like with Botox.
Right. Right.
So, the frog comes over us, right? And the frog, this amphibian that has this kind of like archetype of the alchemist, inhabits us. And then it does its work. It goes, nope, liver's off, too much fire, gallbladder needs to be dropped in the hepatic system here. Boom, next thing you know, you're throwing up green. You're throwing up this yellow that looks like antifreeze. Pharmaceuticals from deep in the cellular tissue, phlegm, candida, parasites.
Right.
And destroys all types of parasites, pathogens, and fungal infestations in the body, like almost instantaneous.
Neal, what are your thoughts? That's really interesting.
So it's powerful in the capacity. So,
I just had a quick question. Excuse me. I've had a cough for the last week, so excuse me. What are your thoughts on people? So when we talk about this swelling, right? People that are coming into this topic and hearing it from, the outside, and they're coming in and hearing about this, and there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction. People listening to this that are going to be like, oh, that's anaphylactic shock, and there's a tremendous danger here. How do you respond to that? And what would you say to that? And how do you address that notion in relation to indigenous medicines? What we know about anaphylactic shock. And I've seen people. I had a woman when I was in acupuncture school. I suggested she take bee pollen, and I told her to take one granule at a time because rarely people have, allergic reaction. She ignored it and took 3 spoonfuls and she blew up, same thing, just swelled. So I just want to hear your thoughts around that. So people, if they're hearing this and they're like, and they have that kind of freaked out response, just, your thoughts on that.
Sure. Absolutely. What's interesting is that the medicine has different effects on different people, right? Mm-hmm. Again, characteristic definition of adaptogen. And so it doesn't just happen in the face, the lips, and the throat. Okay. But although that's the most common. So for instance, a woman who has experienced, and I've done a lot of work, and a lot of women have been sexually traumatized, right? That we find like 50% of women have had some sexual trauma.
Yeah, right.
And so, and a lot of that affects the lower chakras, and which is right where the reproductive organs are, and the Sushumna, their life, their wellspring of happiness and joy, and their Shakti. So what we see too is that the medicine will go where the trauma is. So sometimes there's a lot of trauma to the central nervous system, which is all the head, and a lot, and also the lymph here. If we think about it, the amylase, and this is like what our first line of defense is the ear, the nose, and the throat. And this is kind of segues into like hape as well, this jungle tobacco snuff that we use to dry out.
Is that the stuff that goes up your nose? Is that the stuff that they...
Yeah. We use a kirpa, and you
Yeah, that's very intense. We did that, and that's intense. That's an eye-opener.
Your head blown off with a shotgun, and you're like, wow, am I still here? Again, another indigenous medicine that just blows you away. But, we use those medicines to dry up, because we have a lot of lymphatic response in drainage issues, microcirculation issues, lymphatic issues, glandular issues here in the throat, in these areas. So if that is swelling, it's because it needs to swell. Because it's opening. That vasodilation is cleaning out all the gunk and the funk and the mucus and draining it out of the body. Just the same way that the ovaries may swell and become inflamed. On my partner, who had, early on in age, had some experience that was, less than desirable, and, we put the medicine on her back, and it went right to the ovaries, and she described that her ovaries were searing like coals, and it cleared all this ancestral energy and this trauma out of the body. So back to that Peter Levine, it's just this medicine has this beautiful ability to travel directly where your intentions or your body is needed, go right to that area, and have a specific effect and response with an area that has kept your body from working, on a basis of homeostasis, something that's been out of alignment, right? We see this with like the Rife machines, frequency, organs are toxic or not operating at frequency. So this adaptogen goes right there to the organs. There's a gentleman who serves medicine, and he was speaking about the medicine going right to his genitals, and he was kind of dumbfounded, and he couldn't think of anything. He's like, I was never been raped, and I haven't been abusive to myself. I don't have sexual addiction issues, and there's nothing that I could understand why. But then he talked to his mother about it, and when he was 4 years old, the babysitter, which was a woman, and usually in this country we think, I can't see a woman raping a man, but it was a baby, and so he had stored trauma in his genitals in that area, and the Kambo went right there, opened, cleared, repatterned, and then freed his energy. And so there was some energetic block that was there. So I think, when we talk about anaphylactic shock and, how this medicine works, it's unique in the way that it goes to where it needs to, but a lot of us have issues in the central nervous system, in the ear, nose, throat, glandular area, because this is also the first line of defense, right? There's an opening here, and there's an opening here, and not a lot of people know, but that internal pathway is an external environment. Mm-hmm. From the mouth to the south.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's all of these microorganisms and things and mucus and stuff, that pathogens, parasites that can be lodged in not necessarily the most harmonious of environments. And so I think when people really get a swelling up here, it's a clearing. And there's, which is interesting too, because I wanted to segue a little bit about how this medicine has a neurological application with regards to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, and neuropathy and radiculopathy that we find is becoming an epidemic, right? We have a radical increase from, like, let's say the 70s to 2010.
Yep.
That, Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's is affecting now younger people, and literally like over 50% of people past this age with this particular lifestyle are afflicted with this. And my personal understanding is that there is, from vaccines, from titanium dioxide and heavy metals that have been put in our deodorants, things that have been specifically placed by industry and owners of the same companies as medical organizations, right, have designed the issue of toxemia in the physiological body of the Westerner. And so we know that one of the characteristics of the Parkinson and the Alzheimer's is this buildup of heavy metal toxemia at the brainstem, which is a neurological disruptor. Now that's the big concentration at the source, but we also see the proliferation of these scenarios on the microcosm as well. Heavy metals into areas, and then we create
Neal, can you back up? We had a freeze in the Skype, talk there. Can you just go back about 30 seconds? So you were just saying there was a freeze. The last thing you said, there was something about, I think you said something about, just kind of backtrack 30 seconds because it just froze for a second. So I don't want to lose what you said.
No worries. In my personal study with, holistic nutrition and the understanding of, chemistry and the body, and toxicology, really. Yep. We find that in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patients and dementia patients and other neurological degenerative diseases that fall in this category, that there is a buildup of heavy metals at the brainstem, the central nervous system, right, which is, obviously the controller of our nerves and ability to conduct electricity, and activate motor skill response.
Yep.
So we see this, and it's amazing, but there's, heavy metals are a very tenacious, to remove from the system. And we still good?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
So Kambo is one of these medicines that really radically moves and shifts. And I think that that's another aspect about the Kambo is that, there's also, I just want to make a statement. There's some, there's some pushback from Western medicine about referring to Kambo as a medicine because if it hasn't been labeled by the Food and Drug Administration, right, it's not a medicine. So I would say the Kambo magic. One of the things about the Kambo magic, because we don't have an application for magic, and I put wizards and
Yeah.
just crazy, amazing things that are also found in prehistoric environments. Like where do you get a 40-foot snake? It sounds like something of myth until you run across it in an
Right.
ecosystem, and you're like, wow, these things exist. And down there in the Amazon, mermaids and amphibious people, and pink dolphins that look like quasi-human. And you have to have a big question mark above your head and say, what the fuck do we really know? How long has it been since we have left the forest? How long have we been in the
Right.
city with no senses,
Yeah.
with being and understanding that magic in the body is just radically purge heavy metals. There was an amazing case with a dear friend of mine, and she, three, I believe, and she had dementia. And we knew there was a neurological degenerative disease in her case because that it was affecting her motor skill ability and her incontinence. And Western medicine's solution was to drill into the brain and to try to relieve pressure. Right? This is this old. Kind of like the Spanish Inquisition. We see this response, and which again builds on that, creating trauma in the body as opposed to releasing it. Well, for 2.5 years, she had been unresponsive. This woman's in her 50s, and of course, imagine her daughter very heartbroken, losing her mother, and then her mother is a vegetable, right? Who,
Yeah.
we're having this conversation about, should I keep her alive? She's feeding tube and not able to control her own bowels. And so she came to me about Kambo, and I said, well, it's your mother. I can teach you how to apply it and the things to prepare for her, and I'm here to support you. But we kind of had to go into a living assisted home covertly, like the Jedis, and apply this medicine. Well, within, we started small, 1 point for a couple sessions, then 2 points. Within, on the 5th session, her mother actually made a full sentence in response to her daughter, fully conscious and
Wow.
present. So we also see this medicine having a use with neurological degenerative diseases that have these, very difficult and tenacious situations of heavy metal toxemia in the body. And these other, look, let's face it, there's solvents, right? Cancer, what is chemotherapy, right? Chemotherapy is a modified mustard gas chemical cocktail that is a solvent, right? This is an industrial solvent that was developed in, Nazi Germany, Auschwitz, Jewish concentration camps for eliminating and killing people, which incidentally was sponsored by Monsanto and Bayer. I don't know if many people out there know that those were the financiers behind those medical concentration camps, and that's what these were used for. So, this is kind of the chemo versus combo, right?
Yeah.
Conversation. So,
Yeah.
okay, for those out there looking at doing chemo, and of course, insurance, it's the only option that's covered by insurance. Coincidentally enough, but how do we get these solvents out of our body? Should they be effective at doing, the job that they're doing? And I always tell people, because my own father died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, and it was Chinese medicine that kept him alive 15 years longer, and then he made the mistake of trusting Western medicine, and as soon as he did chemo, the body was so toxic and pickled with these solvents that there was no way to get them out of the body. And so, I tell people, with regards to chemo versus combo, if you go there with these substances, how are you going to clear them out of the body?
Yeah, it's a viable question. I mean, and it's such a touchy subject, right? Because there's, some people really gravitate towards chemo because they think it's the better move for whatever reason, right? Worldview, how they grew up. Some people think they want to go this route, right? They want to go something a little more alternative and try something, what you would call quote unquote more natural. I have a one of my closest friends had chemo when he was a kid. He was 15, in his teens when he got cancer, and he got cancer in a couple of different areas, and he ended up getting chemo, and he lived. He was, a lot of people, the survival rate, right, after 5 years, a lot of people get sick after chemo and end up dying. But he survived, and he got into Chinese medicine. He's an acupuncturist now, and totally went the opposite way. But one of the things he said, he actually partook in a Kambo ceremony. And I'm 37, and he's my age. We're only a couple months apart. And he said when he went through the Kambo ceremony, one of the first things that he noticed was as he was puking, he said to me when we got on the phone, he said, "I feel like I was puking up my chemo." He said that, and he said he could. So apparently, if I remember this correctly, there was when he would get chemo, he would get a taste in his mouth. There was a taste and an experience that he would have in his olfactory, in the smell and taste of his mouth, that was very indicative of that experience. He remembered it very vividly, and he said when he was puking during the Kambo ceremony, he said he could taste it again. He could taste the flavor of the chemo, whatever it was doing in his body when he was a kid. He said he felt it coming back out. So he was at a place with this where he was saying that he thinks that the use of Kambo is probably going to be something that he needs to do a number of times and probably throughout his life, just to continue to help that process, because who knows how things get lodged into our bodies. A lot of these medicines can, chemo can be so incredibly hard on people. Yes, it can, I've seen it, people survive, but I mean, I know a lot of people who really struggle after the fact. They're never quite the same either. It's so hard on the body because it kills so many things. So it's interesting to hear just this other take of potential ways to address, these very real life issues that we get hit with, because cancer rates are high. It's so much higher now. Cancer rates are through the roof. Neal, let me ask you this. So for people, because I've had a number of people, I've referred a couple people to you now that just want to pick your brain. Hence part of why I wanted to get you on the podcast and make this information accessible. But a number of people have asked, there's a couple questions that seem to come up when they're coming for Kambo, right? So we talked about the anaphylactic shock piece, right? That was one of the questions that I had. So another one is age and essentially the contraindications. Some people that have reached out to me, they're like, well, I'm 70 and I'm, can my old withered body take this? And then I've also had other people ask, well, like, what's the youngest age, a kid could do, could children do this? And if children have had cancer and they want to attempt this or explore this as a supplemental, support in this process, talk to me about ages and talk to me about contraindications a little bit, if there are any regarding Kambo, because I think that's a relevant question. Probably a lot of people are wondering if they're, people's interest is probably piqued. I know when I heard about Kambo, I was like, well, this sounds rough, but I'd like to do it. But I think it's a good question, good questions to answer. So age and age, and then the other piece.
Yeah. So, there are a few contraindications. Warfarin, Coumadin, these types of blood thinners for people that have high blood pressure, usually because of their poor diet, high carbohydrate diet, and weak cardiovascular system, lack of exercise, etc. So if you're on a blood thinner and it's it is a danger to come off of those blood thinners because you have got, and so that means you have basically a chronic low blood pressure, medically induced low blood pressure condition. That is a contraindication. If you have let's say a kidney transplant, if you have a foreign organ, if you had an organ transplant and you are on immune repressive medications, that's another contraindication, because that the combo recognize those immune repression as something that's not natural and forces it out of the body, and then the body is also wanting to force the foreign organ out of the body because that's not naturally in homeostasis with the body. So a heart valve or pacemaker, any type of industrial cardiovascular modification mechanism is a contraindication. Epilepsy, not if you maintain it from a like a naturopathic dietary standpoint, but if you're on actual pharmaceuticals, again, the body and the combo will actually express and detoxify the accumulation of pharmaceuticals that have been repressing the epilepsy. Then you may have the chance of having a seizure. So if you're out there and you want to do combo and you are epileptic, you need to wean yourself off of medication a week before. As well, if you you're on warfarin and Coumadin, and you can get yourself off of those medications for a couple weeks and maintain through other, breathing techniques, supplements, or diet, then you're a candidate for a combo.
So just to clarify on that, Neal. So if I'm hearing this correctly, so there's the people that are potentially on these pharmaceutical drugs, if they were to create a window of time prior to a ceremony and were to be quote unquote clean in their bodies, then this could be an opportunity for them at that time. Okay. And
I would say, proceed with caution and work with somebody that, has a gentle hand with combo. In your case, you're a warrior. You clearly have the background, the nutrition, the strength, the martial arts. You have a warrior's heart. And so 9 points for you is, I would have not put that many on you, but your shaman probably knows you very well and knows that, you needed just the right push out of your, mental state, because you're a mental giant, Gray, and to, hurl you over the side of the cliff. He just pushed you enough, right, to get that process.
It wasn't working until he got the higher points up. Yeah, for whatever reason, my body, I think it was just trying to regulate it, and he's like, don't do that. He's like, let go. Right. Surrender. He's like, it's a battle you can't win.
These pranic and theta healers, they have, mudras and different breath techniques. And, this is a place where we get to let go of all that shit.
Yeah,
and
I had to.
So, and as we approach combo, we should approach it as if we are on the outside of the onion, trying to peel layers down of toxemia through hydration, through defecation, through purging, through sweating and expressing via the skin. And so, how do we eat a whale? One bite at a time, right? You can, when there has been, deaths, and there's been, enough, there's been the amount of deaths in combo in the last 1,000 years I could count on one hand, right? So we don't have a lot of documented cases, but when there is documented cases, it's because of complication of toxemia, adrenal failure, issues with elimination, dehydration, lack of rest, sleep. So I say to everybody out there listening to this, approach combo gently. Do a couple points. Let your body see what the response is. Detoxify. Do a few more points. Within the Matses protocol, we do 3 treatments within 28 days within the lunar cycle. This allows the body to recalibrate itself, to heal, to rest, to rehydrate, to bring nutrients, strength. This medicine will kick your ass.
Big time.
We have respected nature for what? Those things that can kick our ass, right? Snakes and lions and tigers and bears.
Oh, yeah.
We have, particular respect for those things. So this medicine is one of those things that we get to clear these energies. And so be gentle. In the West, we're extreme. And sometimes I see these extreme combo guys that go out into the jungle and harvest it right. As a bodybuilder and put 10 right on his chest and, and just, think like, it looks good on the cinema, but the reality is it might be a little bit much for the system. It's a little macho, and it's not the point of this medicine. And we see a lot of that, especially if you've got addiction issues with opiates and such. I'm getting ready to start a grant working with opiate addiction and working with Kambo and cleaning the system. And this is the way we need to work with adaptogens, is a little bit at a time, So this is.
Neal, before you go on, because I want you to develop on that thread, but just go back because I want to get that question about the age. The youngest like young children, and then the old age, and then keep going about the grant, because I want to hear about that. But I just want to, before we start going forward again, I want to get that age piece in.
Yeah, and also to cover contraindications, the last contraindications for the women, because we know that 75% of most people that are doing Kambo and yoga and these types of detoxification programs are women. So ladies, do not do Kambo if you know that your period is going to be coming within a couple days. So we want a couple days before the moon and a couple days after the moon. Reason being is that when you approach your moon, all the blood gathers around the reproductive organs, right? And so if we have a Kambo ceremony in the middle of our moon, then the body vasodilates and the blood moves that's been coagulating around the reproductive organs to facilitate the shedding of the uterine layer, right? And all of a sudden, all that blood gets pulled throughout the body, and it will create a more difficult and painful process of detoxification if you do Kambo. So just wait on your moon, if you're in your moon, or if you're a couple days close. That pretty much covers the list of contraindications.
Okay, great.
That I know of. Now, as far as age is concerned, I have seen the medicine put on, I would say, the youngest I've seen is 12 months.
Wow.
12 months. And, this is an issue, right? Because children die, right? Children die of malaria and dengue and yellow fever and colic, and people get the babies get sick, and they're also exposed to environmental conditions that can be harsh. So I've seen the medicine done. I remember when my first trip to Peru, when I started working and went down there to sit with the Matses, this little like tyke Peruvian kid. Matse's boy, 3 years old, right? He was flexing his muscles for me and showed me all of his Kambo dots, and I was like, wow,
no way.
Yeah, 3 years old, and let me tell you what, that kid looked like, a little superhuman kid. Now, very strong, very clean, very crisp and attentive. Now, I personally have done the medicine on a 9 and a 10-year-old. A daughter and a son under the supervision of their parents, and their parents participated as well. And what a beautiful thing to have these children observe their parents go through this, clearly some suffering, right? Some uncomfortable experiences here, throwing up. Nobody likes to do that.
Yep.
And then, elect themselves of their own accord to volunteer to suffer and to purge and to clear. And I administered Hep A and Wattapies, and just like clockwork, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and out came the purge. And these two kids are so strong. So this medicine can be used even on animals. Though I'm not giving you permission to use this on animals, but the Matses put a little bit on the dog's nose that also makes them strong and cleans the body. And I also want to say, under no circumstances would I recommend blowing Kambo up your nose, because there are some Kambo snuffs out there, or ingesting it. Ingesting this medicine can kill you. So it can end your life. So important that you don't do that. and or leave any combo if you're a combo practitioner, anything that falls off of a person potentially. You have to be mindful of that, because if a pet gets a hold of it, you can have an issue. But as far as the age limit, it really has to do with some cardiovascular health, and that's where we look at. And I always will, again, I don't bring in a 70-year-old and put 5 dots on them, right? I don't put five points. I'll start with a test point, a singular point. And then I'm preparing them too, right? Like, how prepared are they spiritually, right? Mm-hmm. How much do these people want to sacrifice their ego, and how determined are they, intentionally primary are they at doing this? Why are they doing it? So the spirit behind and the intention behind it have to be good. But then I start very slowly. But, I have seen 80-year-old men down in Peru that look like in their late 50s, and they do combo all the time. Mm-hmm. I know Matse's elders that do combo every week religiously. 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. Never more, just 3 points, just 3 points.
Wow.
Because this medicine builds strength in the endocrine system. It keeps the body clean. So it's it's a maintenance medicine as well as a radical clearing medicine for when there's accumulation of panema.
Okay. So it sounds like the the things to be mindful of are just like you said, the cardiovascular. If a person has had, say if a person in the past has had a heart attack, in the past, are they a candidate, or is it because they've had a heart attack it's, they should not, touch it? How does that, how do you navigate that?
I would, of course, tell them to consult with their physician, that I'm not a cardiologist. And then I would say, can you run 4 or 5 miles? Mm-hmm. Can you exercise? Do you exercise? I would evaluate, their BMI and how much accumulative weight is there on the vascular system. Like, how much extra weight, how mm-hmm. much does that heart have to make to push around blood in this body? Or is this, a snappy guy who does, Bikram yoga 3 times a week and is, sure. within 13% BMI range, and you're looking at him and saying, okay, he had a heart attack because maybe his diet was too rich in carbohydrates, but his diet has changed. He's mm-hmm. cleared stuff. He's taken on exercise. That's a candidate for combo. But the guy who's 350 pounds on his deathbed with cancer and had a heart attack and a stroke and has Bell's palsy, I would say, look, clearly there's some, preliminary work that you might approach before you approach combo, because you could lose weight. That's going to help your system, make it easy on your. Right. You can change your diet. So these things, combo is a medicine. It's an emergency medicine and a maintenance medicine as well. But if you haven't done the work in nutrition and exercise and other spiritual disciplines to prepare yourself, I wouldn't recommend it as the go-to at the beginning of your journey. Yeah, you've got a little bit to go before you're prepared and ready for a rite of passage like that. Because if your own pain body and your own ego keeps you from getting up and having the discipline to eat right and exercise, then what is combo going to do for you?
Sure. And that's very reasonable and fair enough. And what do you, Neal, what do you think about in terms of duration and frequency? So, you said some of the people that you had met in Peru, like they're weekly, right? Three dots, every week, like clockwork. So say, the average, let's take myself, the average American guy, I'm here, I'm in pretty good health. Got my little stuff, that we all have. But if I was kind of like going to get on a plan, say, and integrate combo into my life, what would be a reasonable? Is there an average? Is there a reasonable way to look at it? Like, is it at the change of season? Is it, how do you? What would you kind of suggest in terms of that?
I think a good universal And again, like taking the consideration, because, you know, if you can't find a Kambo Frog detox uh, practitioner out there, because we're just now starting to get our practitioners and our training out there, you want to find somebody who really sits with you and does an interview with you. I mean, a medical intake in this situation.
Yeah.
Still there, bud?
Oh, yeah. I was just listening. Yeah, but I'm with you. You still there? Did I freeze up on you?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, go.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes it happens with streaming. It just, there's those freeze moments.
It's all good. So I was saying that make sure that you find a medical a Kambo practitioner who does a medical intake, who looks at a lot of things. And with your medical intake, besides your low left quadratus issue and some things I can see in your field and kidney, I would say, like, you're, for all intents and purposes, a very healthy 37-year-old, well-balanced, good Qi, good Shen, good Jing. Everything's really there, a good strength foundation. Your head space is in right. You're a warrior. You're willing to, sacrifice the ego and go through these rite of passages. So for you, I would say quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
Every 3 months, I would recommend going through at least one session or a series of 3 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And another person, I might say, well, we've got a complication, we've got some issues. I'm treating a gentleman who's got some kidney failure issues and some real issues. So I would suggest doing 10 sessions with him over 3 months.
Oh, I see.
So it is like myself as a Kambo practitioner, I wouldn't say that I'm a master practitioner, but because I've got a medical background and an understanding of indigenous medicine and have served, hundreds of people, I can kind of get a gist of where I would put the person in the protocol. And, when a person has really experienced a change in their sleep pattern, their diet, their awareness, because this medicine will change what you eat. It will change the way, you're not going to go from a 3-day Kambo ceremony and go to Taco Bell. The energy and chemicals that are present are going to be a red flag for the body. The body's going to go, what are you doing? You don't want that. Get that out of your space. And so you're not going to want that. So, somebody that needs to go through a protocol, is going to be experiencing different changes in their life, and they need some time for that gestation and transformation to occur. In other cases, if we're, let's say, working with a cancer patient, or AIDS or herpes, something that is tenacious and aggressive, right? Then I would say fasting, and maybe just an occasional like super phytonutrient like spirulina, but mostly a liquid diet with high in its nutrient content, but low in its roughage and its digestive fiber and mass. And then I would say heavy on the water, and then let's do consecutive Kambo building up. So I've seen Kambo done. There's a warrior's initiation. There's a couple ones that I've heard. There's 100-point Kambo protocol that's done in the process. So you go in waves.
100 points?
100 points at various points of the body.
Bro.
And then
I can't even deal with that number. That's just like 100 points. Wow. Okay.
I don't know, the same as you started, for sure. And there's another group that does, like 3 sessions within 1 day. And in this case, the gentleman from Psychedelic Times, I forget his name, but he did 6 points, 9 points, and 11 points within a 6-hour period. And so, we know that the way the peptides, because they're bioavailable, the ways they affect the body is that the body absorbs what it can. And then it can't absorb anymore, and it does what it needs with the peptides that it has. And we're going to talk a little bit about frog sleep, when people pass out on Kambo, but because of this bioavailability in cancer patients and such, and in, let's say, lymphedema and AIDS and herpes, in areas that we're going deeper into the endocrine or into the cellular biology, trying to get the medicine deep, where those things are latched on, we put a concentration of that medicine, and we keep the gut clean so as to transfer energy and not put too much on the liver to create all the enzymes for digestion. And we keep things strong and clean with pure energy like spirulina and blue-green algae, chlorella, and things like that, but then really redirecting more of the energy to elimination in the body. And then we can, so I think it is, to answer the question on a general level, for someone who's healthy, who's just using it for the spiritual and mental and strengthening capacity, that quarterly is good. We're starting to see, as I'm down in Miami and I'm getting with these, millionaires and billionaires, and they're like, man, Neal, like what, I'm on this, I'm doing microdosing, like what's the next level to get me into this theta state, right? And of course we know, like we can only activate the amount of circuitry that we have. And so if anything's blocking, that's blocking your potential activation of what you can pull from. And so we know toxemia will do that. So I'm saying Kambo, and these guys are doing this Kambo, and it's dropping them into this deep theta, state where everything is just connected, and they're in this flow state. Yeah. Because their body's clear of the toxemia. They're with Rishi, and they're doing meditation, and they're exercising, and all of these things, and they're killing it, right? They're just crushing their goals and law of attraction. But so each person's different. I think your Kambo practitioner should really take a real specific intake and spend some time with you.
So that's a good thing to, I think, for people that because these are questions that I've had, and people that have come to me, and I'm like, I just don't know, you got to talk to Neal. But, so it sounds like if we were to do like a real baseline, quick bullet point checklist, what you're looking for in a practitioner, one is they do an intake, right? Two is that they are, they've been certified essentially, right? They've gone through some kind of training. And then is there, what's the third, is there a third piece to that they're, they start slow, it sounds like that they're judicious in their.
I would also make sure that those practitioners, have served hundreds of people, right? If they don't have a medical release form, that's there, that takes into consideration your medical background, drugs that you're taking, if they're not answering, if they're not asking discovery questions about your background and understanding, and this is an issue, and I've seen this with a lot of indigenous people that come to the States. I mean, no release form, no asking of the questions, and this is where
they just jump in.
I am kind of this world bridger with my roots in the indigenous, but my understanding of the allopathic and the medical, and so I have a non-culturally attached position as a an overseer who has a multi-dimensional comprehensive approach to how to deliver this medicine, because indigenous people won't ask the question. And I talked with one gentleman who offers ceremonies in Orlando, and I said, well, what about an organ transplant or someone with cardiovascular diseases? He's like, I serve him Kambo. I said, you could kill him, and in those situations, I think that I would also be wary from an indigenous standpoint that you don't have a comprehensive enough practitioner that has a medical background or understands the importance of, what's happening in the West here with the condition of the body and drugs and pharmaceuticals and how they affect them. So
the Western body is not particularly tough. I mean, these days collectively, if you look at the unhealthy demographic of America, we're not as resilient as an organism as we once were. People are not, they're not super strong. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and another reason to start slow, right? To just
go slow.
You know, it's the way we clean a mirror, right? A little bit at a time, and then we step back.
Yeah.
And we look, okay, missed that spot, and a little bit at a time. So that, you know, from an indigenous standpoint, I've seen a real red flag with the lack of medical understanding of the Western condition. Uh-huh. So if you're going to sit with somebody who is going underneath the brand of, well, I'm not certified from an organization. I'm the quote unquote the indigenous. This is my family's medicine. This is my people's medicine. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest getting information and making sure that they understand your medical condition. That if there is any complications, what drugs you are to take, what preparations that you need to make to really be in the best place to receive the medicine. On the other spectrum, we are starting to see, you know, which is one of the reasons I established the Kambo Foundation and preservation of the frog and certification, working with the indigenous, but also, you know, the allopathic medical and a good comprehensive training program, is because now people are going Kambo crazy, right?
Yeah.
You can get Kambo on eBay, and, you know, is it Kambo? Is it aloe vera on a stick? How do I know with the frog? Was it, you know?
You can buy it on eBay?
You can buy it on eBay.
Oh.
And so, you know, like, this is, you know, the homogenization of, you know, indigenous medicine, right? So here we are, and then now, you know, there was a gentleman last week that a person died in complications with, not really because of Kambo, more because of neglect and lack of water. They went out to Peru, they had AIDS, then they got Giardia from the food, they had lack of water, they did Kambo, then they got sepsis, the Giardia turned to sepsis, and they died from a complication of that. It really wasn't the Kambo. But I think the other thing is there's the first organization was the IKAP, International Kambo Association of Practitioners, and this is a group that essentially offers certifications. And it's a few Kambo practitioners that have put together the first course, and it's the one that most people have utilized, but I have not really seen very comprehensive, experienced practitioners come out of that program. There's a couple that are out there. There's a couple in San Diego that I recommended to you.
Yep.
San Francisco, Caitlin Thomas, the different people that have a medical background is what I would look to first. People that are, let's say, acupuncture, chiropractic, and maybe like holistic medicine, and they're adding this to their repertoire of skills that they're bringing.
Right.
That would be someone, because what happens is, you know, every Reiki therapist and Theta healer, breatharians are getting Kambo certified with a program that is a week to 10 days. And, you know, how many sessions have you done? How much have you done it yourself? Like, this is a medicine where I would look to those Western practitioners and make sure this is somebody that has an online presence, a very good medical intake disposition with each client, is holding a very safe space. They personally personify the health and the integrity around the medicine, and you can see on their Instagram or their website that this person has served hundreds of people.
Right.
That's a good person, because that person is not in it for the money, because I think there is a bit of a mad dash to the bank with indigenous medicine, as we realize the deficiency and the need for indigenous rite of passage through ayahuasca, Kambo, San Pedro, all these medicines. And, you know, typical Western capitalists look at it and say, well, I'm going to make a fortune on Kambo. You know, I can do the here.
It's the likely game and story that happens all too often.
Yeah, and so, you know, things to weigh looking for a practitioner there.
No, that's really good. Well, Neal, as we close out here and just kind of wrap all of this up, everything we've hit on a lot of different things. But is there anything else that you would like to interject or leave us with, as you're talking to the people that are listening to this? Is there any other, final point that you want to, touch on or make regarding just the dissemination of Kambo, the application? Is there anything else that's on your mind?
Yeah, and to let you know too, Gray, I do have a little bit more time. If you have some additional questions, there's no problem. I'm broadcasting from a different space, and so we didn't have any time constraints here. Well, I think, Kambo is a very powerful medicine, and it is a very transformative medicine. I want to say to like my brothers and sisters out there that are doing this deep work in transforming sometimes the ancestral line, and all of the transformation that's happened in 2018, and just the changes that have just seemingly are just like almost week after week, like what I'm experiencing this week, like I can't believe after last week, it's like, and really, and what's next week going to be like? So this kind of acceleration of tenacious transformation, get out there and do Kambo. This is a medicine that can reset all of these things and remove, the fear, because there is a certain fear that can accumulate with either depression or anxiety. And we know, this as a TCM practitioner, shows up in the kidneys, shows up in the liver. This is digestion, elimination. Next thing you know, we have binding, in our, and we're not emotionally, energetically, physically digesting and eliminating, and then you have toxemia. And so like get out there and use Kambo as a way of fighting back against your own fear, because that this medicine will remove the obstacle, and remarkably enough, a lot of times that obstacle is you.
Yeah. Well said. Well said, amigo. Well, unfortunately, I have to shift gears because I've got a little 2-year-old running around in my house right now. But I do have one last question, and then we'll close out here. So, it's in regards to the use of Kambo synergistically with ayahuasca. So the just to give context, so you understand the question, and then you can answer this. When the ceremony that I sat with was, like I said, it was Kambo in the morning, ayahuasca in the evening through the night, following morning Kambo again, and then ayahuasca ceremony again. And so when the first day, the Kambo did the ceremony, had a lot of resistance. My body was trying to regulate it, and I was trying to use every breathing technique I had to keep my body from going through whatever it was doing. But then I purged, had my thing, sat with ayahuasca. The following day, I sat with the Kambo. It was a much easier process. It was still difficult, but I didn't resist. I purged faster. It was just a lot more smooth in that regard. And then that night, I took less ayahuasca and had a stronger experience. I had the intensity of the experience was ratcheted up, and the shaman that I was working with said the Kambo sort of clears your palate and gets you a little more receptive for the ayahuasca. And he said that these two were used synergistically. They pair very well together. So just if you can talk about that a little bit, why is that? Has it always been like that, or is that just sort of a new formula that's come up in recent times? But a little bit about that, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It has always been like that.
Okay.
And because what will keep you from having a deep experience with ayahuasca, Yahe, grandmother, right, is panema, right? Thought, trying to prepare, trying to block, trying to breathe, trying to control. And so, as well, remember in the beginning of this interview, the ayahuasca, the grandmother, the Pachamama, is the one who gifted the frog. So they are intertwined in their spiritual connection, as the frog comes from the forest, which is, the vine of the souls, right. The ayahuasca. It is produced, the frog is produced in the forest. So it is a gift with the grandmother medicine. And so it works in correlation well with that. And when people do ayahuasca and don't have a purge or don't have an experience or don't have a connection, it's because, again, of toxemia in the body. It's not able to get to the depth that can allow the person to release into a natural state and the DMT to proliferate into it. So yeah, the Kambo and the ayahuasca, and I had used, either before or after, but it is it does work in conjunction very well.
Synergistic, yeah.
Synergistically. So yeah, and there's some more information out there about that. I mean, we cover on some of the articles in KamboFrogDetox.com, and we have a Kambo, if you guys are out on Facebook as well, we've got a Kambo Frog Detox page, and then we've got a Kambo Frog Detox research group.
Great.
You can get into, and we cover a lot of these questions. So if you guys are thinking about Kambo or looking for a practitioner or any of that and you have questions, we always get back to you within a day. And we have a lot of people that have questions about it, and other people that have done Kambo. A lot of times, some good feedback. That authentic feedback is really nice in the community. Yeah, I wanted to also talk to you about,
excuse me, sorry.
No worries. If you're looking at being certified, the Kambo Foundation, we're setting up a certification program that's very comprehensive with Indigenous healers, as well as myself teaching and another botanist and someone who is actually paired with the author of The Shaman's Apprentice. So good roots, and I think a good team is where it's at. But if you're looking at that too, remember, you want a good training and a lot of experience, like a massage therapist, right? That's why they call it a practice. You're not really a good therapist until you've done 1,000 massages. And
experience, yeah.
Yeah, so, keeping the ego in check and really coming from a good, pathway. So, yeah, and just, shout out to my brother, Kai Van Bodie with Pathway of Power out there, and just, miss you guys and just appreciate it. And I'm open, too, to travel now. I'm open.
Very cool.
If you guys have a ceremony and you can get 10 people together, and usually an average fee is, the universal fee for Kambo is about $150 for a session. That's a group session, and around $350 to $300 for a 3 series. That's 3 treatments. We call it an inoculation. So that's kind of the price point out there.
Great. Well, that's a good point. I should have asked that. So thank you for mentioning that. And so, Neal, just to recap, if people want to find you, Neal Henegar is your name. KamboFrogDetox.com is your platform, and then you have a Facebook page under the same name, correct?
Yeah, and on Instagram, I love my shaman.
I love my shaman. All right, cool.
That. And, and if you guys if anybody really wants to pull together groups, if you guys want to get a group together in San Diego or something like that, I fly out. We've got a place in Peru that we're building, the Temple of the Amazon, 50 beautiful acres on the Amazon, working with the indigenous people. So beautiful. We do have our roots, in the indigenous, but, it's like, remember, when you approach this medicine, we add the comprehensive aspects to the indigenous people, and the indigenous people remind us of the roots and the magic of nature to recalibrate our system and to get us back into homeostasis. So, do your work, and we're here for you. But it was super awesome to see you, bro.
Yes.
Love you, man.
I love you too, man. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think people need it. I mean, the scope of this and the topic, I mean, it's in its infancy in the West, but I think it's a cool place to be, and where you're positioned is great. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it. So thank you for all that you're doing, man. I appreciate it.
Likewise, man. And thank you for doing, the educational piece and putting together these informational blogs and this show. So you guys stay tuned with Gray out there and follow him. I love the last episode too. So
cool, man. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother. You guys have a great time.
All right. Thanks a bunch, Neal. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.